Chapter 1 The Sickness of Timothy Frisby. Mrs. Frisby, the head of the family of field mice, lived in an underground house in the vegetable garden of a farmer named Mr. Fitzgibbon. It was a winter house such as some field mice who moved to when food becomes too scarce and the living too hard in the woods and pastures in the soft earth of a bean, tomato, black-eyed pea, and asparagus patch. There is plenty of food left over for mice. After the human crops have been gathered, Mrs. Frisby and her family were especially lucky in the house itself. It was a slightly damaged cinder block, the hollow kind with two oval holes through it. It had somehow been abandoned in the garden during the summer, and lay almost completely buried with only a bit of one corner showing above the ground, which is how Mrs. Frisby discovered it. It lay on the side in such a way that the soiled parts of the block formed a roof and a floor, both waterproof, and the hollows made two suspicious rooms lined with bits of leaf, grass, cloth, cotton, fluff, feathers, and other soft things. Miss Frisby and her children had collected the house shady, dry, warm, and comfortable all winter. A tunnel to the surface earth of the garden, dug so that it was slightly larger than a mouse and slightly smaller than a cat's foreleg. Larger than a mouse, slightly smaller than a cat's foreleg, provided access, air, and even a fair amount of light to the living room. The bathroom, formed by the second oval, was warm but dark. Even at midday, a short tunnel through the earth behind the block connected to rooms. Although she was a widow, her husband had died only the preceding summer. Mrs. Frisby was able, through luck and hard work, to keep her family. There were 4 children, happy and well fed. January and February were the hardest months of sharp, hard cold that begun in December lasted until March. By February, the beans and the black eye had been picked over with help from the birds. The asparagus roots were frozen into stone, and the potatoes had been thawed and frozen so many times they had acquired a slimy texture and a rinsed taste. Still, the Frisbys made the best of what there was, and one way or another they kept it from being hungry. Then one day, at the very end of February, Mrs. Frisby's younger son, Timothy, felt sick. That day began with a dry, bright, icy morning. Mrs. Frisby woke up as she always did. She and her family slept close together in a bed of down fluff and bits of cloth. They had gathered warm as a ball of fur. She stood up carefully so as not awaken the children, and walked quietly through the short tunnel to the living room. Here it was not so warm, but really not cold either. She could see from the light filtering down the entrance tunnel that the sun was up and bright. She looked at the food in her pantry, a hollow out space lined with small stones in the earth. Behind the living room there was plenty of food for breakfast and lunch and dinner too, for that matter, but still the sight depressed her, for it was the same try some fare they had been eating every meal for the last month. She wished she knew where to find a bit green lettuce or a small egg or a taste of cheese or a corn muffin. There were eggs in plenty not far off in the hen house, but hens and eggs are too big for a field mouse to cope with. Besides, between the garden and the hen house there was a wide sward of shrubs and grass. Some of it grew up quietly, a cat territory. She climbed up the tunnel, emerging whiskers burst and looked around wildly. The air was sharp and there was white forest thick on the ground and the dead leaves at the edge of the wood across the garden patch. Miss Frisby set off over the gently poured earth, and when she reached the fence, she turned right, skirting the border of the forest, searching with her bright round eyes for a bit of a carrot, a frozen parsnip, or something green, but there was nothing green at that time of the year but the needles on the pine tree and the leaves on the holly, neither of which a mouse or any other animal for that matter can eat. And then straight in front of her she did see something green. She had reached the far corner of the garden, and at the edge of the woods were to meet the fence was a thump in the stump. There was a hole, and out of the hole sprouted something that looked like a leaf, but was not. Miss Frisby had no trouble at all going through the cattle wire fence, but she approached the hole cautiously. If the stump was hollow, as it seemed to be, there was no telling who or what might be living in it. A foot or so from the hole she stood still and watched and listened. She could hear no sound, but from there she could see what the green was. It was in fact a yellowish brownish green, a bit of a corn stalk. But what was a corn stalk doing there? The cornfield was in a different part of the farm altogether, away behind the pasture. Mrs. Frisby hopped closer and then carefully crept up the side of the stump and peered inside. When her eyes got used to dark, she saw that had found a treasure, a winter supply of food carefully stored, then for some reason forgotten or abandoned, but stored by a raccoon perhaps. Not very likely, so far from the steam, most likely a squirrel or a groundhog. She knew that both of these felt free to help themselves to the new corn each year, and that they were strong enough to carry ears away and store them. But whoever had done it, why had he then abandoned the store? And then she remembered back in November there had come from near that edge of the woods the sound that sent all the animals in the forest shivering to their hiding places, the sound of hunter guns shooting, the sound that is a complaint for someone by a furry stabbing pain, and then he never needs his store food again. Since Mrs. Frisby did not even know what kind of animal it had been, much less his name, she could not shed many tears over him, and food it not shed many tears over him, and food was food. It was not the green letters she had no longer for, but she and her children were extremely fond of corn, and there were 8 large ears of stump, a noble supply for a mouse family. During down under the corn, she also could see a pile of fresh peanuts from still another part of the farm, some hickory nuts, and a stack of dried wheat-smelling mushrooms. With her forepaws and sharp teeth, she pulled off a part of the husk from the top ear of corn and then folded it double to serve as a crud carry bag. Then she pulled loose as many of the yellow kernels as she could easily lift up, putting them in the struck bag. She hopped off briskly for home. She would come back for more after breakfast and bring the children to help. First pulling the corn, after her calling cheerfully as she went, "Children, wake up, see what I have for breakfast." A surprise. They came hurrying out, rubbing their eyes in excitement for any kind of surprise in food was a rare and festive thing in the cold, dead winter. Teresa, the oldest, came first. Crowding close behind her was Martin, the biggest and strong, quick male, stirring, herd and handsome like his poor father. Then came Satha, the youngest, a slim, pretty girl mouth, light-haired, and in fact a little light-headed as well, and cover found dancing. "Where is it?" she said. "Where is it? Where's the surprise? Where's Timothy?" asked Mrs. Frisby. "Mother," said Teresa, concerned. "He says he's sick, can't get up." "Nonsense, Martin. Tell your brother to get out of bed at once or he'll get no breakfast." Martin ran to the bedroom ominously, but came back in a moment alone. "He says he feels too sick and doesn't want any breakfast, even a surprise. I felt like his forehead, and it's burning hot." "Oh dear, Miss Frisby, that sounds as if he is really sick." Timothy had an obsession being known to think he was sick when he really was not. "Here you are. May I have you breakfast? Save Timothy's, and I'll go see what's wrong." She opened up the green carrying bag and pulled put the corn on the table, dividing into 5 equal shares. The dining table was a smooth piece of lath supported on both ends by stone. "Corn," shouted Martin. "Oh, Mother, where did you ever get it?" "Eat up," said Miss Frisby, "and a little later I'll show you, because there's a lot more where this came from." And she disappeared into a little hallway that led to the bedroom. "A lot more," Martin repeated as he sat down with his 2 sisters. "That sounds like enough to last for till moving day." "I hope so," Sitha said, "when it's moving day. Anyway, 2 weeks," Martin unauthorizedly. "Maybe 3. Oh, Martin, how do you know?" progressed Teresa. "What if it stays cold? Anyway, suppose Timothy isn't well enough?" At this dreadful thought, so causally raised, they all grew worried and felt silent. Then Salitha said, "Teresa, you shouldn't be so gloomy. Of course he'll be well. He just got a cold, that's all." She finished eating her corn, and so did the others in the bedroom. Mrs. Frisby felt Timothy's forehead. It was indeed hot and damp with sweat. She took his paws and dropped his wrist in an alarm. What was she felt? "Do you feel sick to your stomach?" "No, Mother, I feel all right, only cold, and then when I sit up I get dizzy, and I can't get my breathe too well." Mrs. Frisby peered nonchalantly at her face, and would have looked at tongue, but in the dark room, when she could see no more than the dim outline of his head. He was the thinnest of her children and had a dark complexion like his father, a brother. He was narrow of face. His eyes were usually large and bright and shone with the intensity of his thought. When he spoke, he was Mrs. Frisby knew the smartest and most thoughtful of her children, though she would never have admitted this out loud. But he was also the farthest, and when cold, flu, virus infection came around, he was the first to catch them, but as slowest to recovery. He was also perhaps a result, something of hypochondriac, but there was no doubt he was really sick this time. His head felt as if he had a high fever, and his pulse was very fast. Poor Timothy, lie back down and keep cover. She spread all over him some of the bits of cloth they used as blankets. "After a while we fix you a pallet in the living room so you can lie where it's light. I've found a fine supply of corn this morning, more than we can eat for the rest of the winter. Would you like some?" "No, thanks." "No, thank you. I'm not hungry. Not now." He closed his eyes, and in a few minutes he went to sleep. But it was restless sleep in which he tossed and mounted continually. In mid-morning, Mrs. Frisby, Martin, and Salitha set off for the stump to carry home some more corn and some peanuts and mushrooms. The hickory nuts they cracked and too tedious to gnaw through. They left Teresa home to look after Timothy. When they had wrapped up and helped into a temporarily sick bed in the living room. When they returned at lunchtime carrying heavy loads of food, they found her near tears from worry. Timothy was much worse. His eye looked wild and strange from the fever. He trembled continuously, and each breath he took sounded like a gasp for life. Teresa said, "Oh, Mother, I'm so glad you're back. He's been having nightmares and shouting about monsters and cats. And when I talk to him, he doesn't hear me at all." Not only was Timothy not hearing with his ears, his eyes, though wide open, were not seeing, or if he was not recognizing what they saw. When his mother tried to talk to him, to hold his hands and ask him how he felt, he started past her and as if he did not exist. Then he gave a long, low moan and seemed to be trying to say something, but the words would not form properly and made no sense at all. The other children started in the frightened silence. Finally, Martin asked, "Mother, what is it? What's wrong with him? His terribly ill fever is so high he has become delirious. Where there is nothing for it, I will have to go and see Mr. Ages. Timothy must have medicine."